The sea mist clung to the sheer cliffs of Casterly rock like a jealous lover, veiling its gold-veined face in salt and shadow. Far below, waves beat themselves to froth against jagged boulders, their muffled roars echoing through grottos older than Lan the Clever. In that thin, pre-dawn light, the fortress appeared less a palace of the west than a slumbering titan carved from the bones of gods. Lanterns flickered in narrow arrow slits, lone sentries stamping their boots against chill that could never quite reach the rock's warm, gilded heart. Yet tonight, a stranger's presence threaded the corridors like spilled ink in milk, dark, briny, and impossible to ignore. Euron Greyjoy walked these halls as though the stone itself were a plank beneath his boots. He tasted the iron tang of damp granite, inhaled the faint perfume of lion sigils rubbed smooth by generations of reverent palms, and smiled with the serene arrogance of a kraken uncoiling in unfamiliar waters. His stride was neither hurried nor hesitant. Each step declared ownership long before any parchment might bear a royal seal. Behind him, 2 red priests carried shadow-black torches whose unnatural flames sputtered blue at the edges, casting wavering silhouettes that surged and shrank like restless spirits against gold-leaf tapestries. Those priests spoke no word, yet the hush that followed them felt heavier than 1,000 vows of silence. Cersei Lannister had granted him entrance alone, long after midnight wine had loosened the tongues of her remaining courtiers and lulled them into stupefied sleep. Now she waited in a small council chamber, whose walls were lined not with maps or ledgers, but with captured banners, relics of victories her father and his father before him had so proudly claimed. She had dismissed her tired steward, extinguished the scented candles, and poured herself a goblet of arbor red so dark it threatened to stain even her thoughts. A single brazier burned at the chamber's center, its embers the color of raw meat. As the door opened, she lifted her gaze but not her chin. The subtle difference between an empress and a supplicant disguised as a queen. Euron paused on the threshold, savoring the tableau. Lioness draped in shadow, crown gleaming like a predator's eye, and behind her, walls that groaned beneath the weight of conquest. He bowed just deep enough to mock courtiers who fussed over etiquette, then straightened, the damp ends of his sable hair dripping seawater onto the marble in arrhythmic taps. His lips curled. "Your grace summons me to a den of lions, yet forgets I carry my own claws. Spare me the theatrics." Cersei replied, her voice low, husky, too weary for scorn yet too proud for pleading. "I summoned you because this den, as you name it, has grown restless. Gold alone no longer keeps teeth sharp. I require blood, fresh, foreign, and fearless. Yours will suffice." He circled the brazier, hands clasped behind his back, eye patch glinting where embers kissed the metal. "And in exchange you grant me what? A polite thank you from the Iron Throne? A spot in the histories penned by maesters I'll never read." Her smile sliced through gloom like a honed razor. "In exchange, Lord Greyjoy, you become Lord Reaper of Casterly Rock." The words floated into the hush and settled like ash. Even the flames seemed to draw breath. Euron's brows lifted, amusement dancing across the sea blue of his remaining eye. A kraken on the rock? Blasphemy, some would name it. Others, poetry. "Call it insurance," Cersei said. "My enemies grow bold. The Reach festers, with Tyrell seeds struggling to bloom anew. The north whispers stark. The riverlands still bleed. I need a guardian who fears no siege, no storm, no god but his own." He examined a tattered banner of House Rain, its red lion flaking to dull rust. "Yet your bannermen will howl. The Westerlands are proud. Nenshare. They are loyal to gold, not honor," she countered. "So long as my coffers fill, they will kneel, kiss your ring, and swear fealty to the Kraken's banner, if only to save their minds from collapse when I throttle their trade routes. But they must believe this change inevitable. That is why you walk these halls tonight like you already belong. Appearances first, parchments later." Lightning forked somewhere beyond the sea fog, its silent flash stealing color from the chamber for a heartbeat. Euron's grin widened in the sudden pallor. "You ask for spectacle, Cersei. You'll have it. I shall claim Casterly Rock not as burglar but as bridegroom. Let the realm whisper Euron courted death. And she yielded. Nah. She sipped wine, unblinking. Bravado amuses me less than results. And yet you indulge it. He leaned in, shadows licking the sharp lines of his cheekbones. Our pact will remain secret until the moment secrecy no longer matters. Meanwhile, I require unfettered access to your smithies, your ports, and your ravenry. My fleet will not anchor idle at Lannisport like dogs waiting scraps. We will scour the sunset sea for prizes worthy of wedding gifts. Cersei set her goblet aside. Take what you need, but leave enough ships to garrison the rock. Should the Stormlands test our mettle, I will not be found wanting. A soft chuckle rolled from his chest, deep as undertow. The Stormlands tremble beneath broken Baratheon antlers. Only fools challenge a kraken in its rising tide. Behind them, the red priests planted their torches in iron sconces shaped like lion jaws. Strange smoke curled upward, smelling of myrrh and salt. One priest began to murmur in a tongue not spoken since Valyria's doom, voice catching like distant gull cries. Euron extended a palm, revealing a dagger forged of smoking glass, its edge throbbing with crimson veins that pulsed to the rhythm of a hidden heart. We seal our compact in blood older than crowns, he said. Will you bleed with me, lioness? Cersei approached, undaunted. She drew her own blade, a slim, golden dirk once gifted by Jaime. Steel touched obsidian. Sparks hissed. Without hesitation, she sliced her thumb, crimson welling bright as rubies on a queen's crown. Euron did likewise. Their mingled blood fell onto sea-bleached parchment atop a pedestal. A single page inscribed with neither words nor sigils, as blank as promise. As the droplets sank into fiber, runes unseen a moment before flared dull red, threading across the sheet like veins in marble. The parchment drank greedily until color settled to black. Euron pressed his bleeding thumbprint upon the lower corner. So passes oath to act, vow to deny, right to revoke. He raised an eyebrow. Your mark, your grace. With deliberate grace, Cersei placed her own print beside his. The runes brightened, then faded, leaving only two bloody whorls that gleamed like twin moons eclipsed. The red priests chanted louder, voices twining until their syllables collapsed into a single keening note. The brazier flared, flames vaulting high enough to lick the stone ceiling, and every shadow in the chamber convulsed as though alive. When the fire dropped to embers again, silence pressed tighter than any iron band. Cersei met Euron's gaze. It is done. He bowed, yet this time there was reverence in the motion. Then know this, Queen of Lions. Before the next moon wanes, your enemies will learn the price of underestimating kraken coils. Bash. Hash. At dawn's first blush, a small council of stewards assembled on a terrace, overlooking the endless fields of crimson poppies swaying beneath the rock's western ramparts. They were old men, stooped by account scrolls and heavy ledgers, their fingers ink-stained and tremulous. Among them, Maester Loren clutched a roll of parchment still damp with wax. He hardly noticed the salt breeze tugging at his chain-draped collar. His hazel eyes were fixed upon the stranger descending the spiral steps from the royal wing. Euron's cloak snapped behind him like a galleon's sail catching sudden gust. At each landing he trailed damp prints, seawater pooling in grooves worn by centuries of lion-clad boots. He strode past the stewards without acknowledgement, but the savage wink of his dagger's hilt, carved in kraken ivory, drew their gaze like moths to flame. Loren swallowed, stepped forward, and managed a thin voice. Lord Greyjoy, 1,000 pardons. We were not informed. Now you are? Euron cut in, not slowing. Prepare quarters overlooking the western bay. Strip them of lion trinkets. I'll not share walls with mewling cats. He paused just long enough to lock eyes with the maester. Send ravens to Lannisport's harbor. My ships require resupply within the hour. Ironwood, pitch, and 7 blacksmiths skilled in Valyrian patterns. If they balk, remind them the queen commands obedience. Maester Loren hesitated. Such supplies, my lord, will drain stores earmarked for a future that no longer exists. Euron finished. See it done. He moved on. The stewards parted like reeds beneath a prow. Lauren watched him vanish into a corridor hung with tapestries depicting the founding of the rock, where Lan's golden hair shimmered like captured sun beneath torchlight. A chill not born of morning air whispered through the maester's bones. Something new had crawled into the rock's ancient marrow. Something briny and black and hungry. Bash. Hash. Across the width of Westeros, as riders carried word of the Queen's latest alliance in urgent whispers from inns to holdfasts, Tyrion Lannister stood on the deck of the river galley Maiden's Mercy and contemplated the price of legacy. The slender vessel slipped along the red fork under sable sails, its silent oarsmen cloaked in gray to match dawn's pallor. Though the churning water beneath was muddy brown, it smelled faintly of fish and the spring thaw's promise. Tyrion's cheeks stung in the brisk wind, yet his thoughts simmered hot as mulled wine. My sister pairs with krakens now, he muttered to Varys, who stood beside him swaddled in robes of dove white. I wonder which of them stinks more of rot. Cersei's desperation grows, the eunuch observed. Lips pursed as though tasting bitter fruit. Euron Greyjoy offers something she cannot forge. Fear of the unknown. The Westerlands know lions. They do not know the deep. The deep eventually recedes, leaving bones. Tyrion countered. But if Euron sets talons in Casterly Rock, those bones may belong to my people. Varys shifted, turning his attention to distant hills greening with new grass. Then perhaps we must reach the rock before those talons close. Whispers suggest Cersei's treasury thins. Unpaid sellswords are seldom loyal. A swift, strategic strike. Tyrion wheezed a laugh, devoid of mirth. You propose I steal my birthright back while it sleeps in a kraken's bed? Delightful. Shall we wear masks of drowned men to slip past the guards? There are other avenues than sieges, Varys said. A raven's quill may fell more foes than any sword. Tyrion eyed him. I have quills aplenty. What I lack is time. Euron moves fast as plague among rats. Plagues can be cured, the eunuch replied, voice soft. Often by exposing them to fire. Tyrion considered that, imagining wildfire coursing through tunnels beneath the rock, or dragons swooping from sunset skies. But Daenerys was leagues away. Dragons did not arrive swift as ravens, and wildfire cared little for whom it devoured. He exhaled, the breath plumbing white. 5 years I fled my father's shadow. Now I must crawl back into it to save the realm from my sister's lunacy. The gods possess cruel humor. Crueler still if we fail, Varys said, drawing his cloak tighter. Bash. Hash. Within Casterly Rock's bleak underbelly lay the Subaceous Vault, a cavern where tides intruded twice each day, flooding gold-vined walls and cooling the forges whose bellows once rang with Lannister might. Long abandoned for safer smelteries inland, the vault now shivered with new life. Euron's priests gathered shards of dragon glass, feeding them to fires coaxed from oily pitch that burned blacker than mourning cloth. Sparks spat into brine, hissing like serpents. Above, iron chains groaned beneath the weight of strange cages, hauled from the silence's hold. Wrought iron prisons shaped like inverted kraken tentacles, each confining a creature neither fully man nor beast. One cage swung low enough that torchlight revealed its occupant. A gaunt sailor whose lips were sewn shut with copper wire, eyes gone milky from horrors glimpsed beyond sane horizons. When the priest chanted, the sailor writhed, skin puckering as though tides churned beneath his flesh. Euron watched from a stone jetty, arms folded. They will serve, he declared. Fear thrives on spectacle. A smith approached, soot smearing her cheeks. We've shaped your sigils, my lord. But Valyrian patterns resist the gold softness. She held up a gauntlet forged of black steel, etched with kraken tentacles. Molten vines of gold traced grooves between plates, cooling to harsh glitter. Any thinner, and they'll fracture. Euron ran a thumb across the gauntlet's rim, felt the pulse of heat, and smiled. Perfection lies not in permanence but in awe. If the gold shatters in battle, let fragments blind my foes. He slipped the gauntlet on, flexed. The metal groaned like distant thunder. Prepare the rest. By dusk, we march up through the Lion's Maw. The Rock's people will witness their new Lord Reaper. Dianmo. Bash. Hash. Lady Jenna Lannister, widow of Emmon Frey, matriarch of a dwindling pride, stood atop the Rock's grand promenade, with 50 retainers hastily assembled. Her silver blonde hair was pinned beneath a veil of mourning black. Rumors of her nephew's Pact had reached her hours ago, and already she sensed the shifting wind. She watched as Euron's procession emerged from a massive archway cut into the cliff face, the Lion's Maw itself. First came the Red Priests in twin columns, torches crackling with midnight flames. Then the cages, borne on iron litters by mute thralls, creatures within twitching to unheard drums. Finally, Euron Greyjoy strode forth, clad in that half-black, half-gold armor, kraken helm tucked beneath one arm like a crowned skull. He halted before Lady Jenna, eye assessing, and dipped his head. "My lady, a pleasure to meet the lioness who yet guards this den," she replied with chilled courtesy. "You stride boldly for a guest. A guest today, master tomorrow." He gestured to the murmuring crowd of minor nobles and gold-cloaked guards whose grips tightened on spear shafts. "I come by command of Queen Cersei, bearer of crown and law. Shall I read her writ?" A herald in Lannister crimson unfurled a parchment, though his voice trembled. In tones echoing across carved archways, he proclaimed Euron Greyjoy, Lord Reaper of Casterly Rock, Warden of the Sunset Shore, Protector of the Iron Mines, and Shield against the Stormlands. Titles stitched together by Cersei's cunning. The retainers exchanged anxious glances. Some shifted weight, torn between oath and outrage. Lady Jenna's chin lifted. "The Rock has ever belonged to the blood of Lan the Clever," she said, voice strong enough to carry. "Lion hands chiseled these halls from Mountain's core. Why should we bend knee to a kraken?" "Because your queen commands it," Euron answered smoothly. "Because gold dulls claws when not tempered by salt and steel. And because refusal invites demonstration you will not enjoy." Without signal, the cages lurched forward. The stone-lipped thralls within began to howl through torn stitches, emitting a haunting, bubbling keen that froze blood. Blue flame flickered in their throats, as though something burned from within. Euron raised a hand, and the procession halted. Silence swallowed screams like a python. He faced the nobles again. "I offer choice. Bend and prosper beneath horizons unimagined. Defy and drown beneath waves you cannot fathom." He opened his gauntleted palm. A dozen polished black coins bearing the Kraken's sigil tumbled onto the marble, ringing like distant bells. Tokens of allegiance. "Take one and rise renewed." "Nien." The coins rolled, clinking against armored boots. No one moved. Then Sir Martin Rivers, bastard cousin to Lady Jenna, knelt. He plucked a coin, pressed it to his forehead and murmured, "I serve." In the space of a heartbeat, 10 others followed, then 20. The promenade filled with the sound of coins skating marble as pride bent to survival. Lady Jenna inhaled, tasted the scent of salt where once she scented roses. Slow as tide. She too knelt, her veil brushing stone. "The Rock acknowledges its new Lord Reaper," she said, voice hoarse but clear. Euron's smile cut wide. "Rise then, and roar anew. A kraken rules, not to silence lions but to teach them deeper hunts." He lifted his arms. The Red Priests slammed staffs to ground, sparks leaping skyward. Above, gulls wheeled in screeching circles, as though drawn to the scent of promised carrion. Bash. Hash. Night fell with deliberate sloth, draping Casterly Rock in velvet shadow pierced by torch clusters and alchemical braziers whose green tongues licked the wind. In a high balcony overlooking the sunset sea, Cersei Lannister stood wrapped in sable furs. The chill here bit deeper than King's Landing. Already her breath streamed white. She watched a line of lanterns snake down the Rock's western slope. Ships' crews ferrying cargo from Euron's fleet to hidden armories. The Queen's golden hair shimmered beneath moonlight, yet her eyes were hard chips of obsidian as she considered the game's new board. "When the kraken nests, the lion rests," she whispered, echoing a phrase her father might have coined. But Tywin Lannister had never imagined surrendering his ancestral seat to foreign blood. Cersei felt a pang. Whether regret or satisfaction, she could not tell. Power demanded sacrifices. She had forfeited love, innocence, even children. What was a castle compared to victory? Yet a flicker of unease stirred. If lions slept too deeply, krakens might devour cubs as well. She touched the rim of her dirk where dried blood still clung, a reminder of oaths sealed in shadows. "May the gods watch over fools," she murmured, "for we are their favored children." A distant horn moaned from the sea, long and mournful. Somewhere within the rock, new forges sparked, beating a rhythm like a kraken's heart beneath stone. Cersei turned away, furs billowing, and descended into torchlit corridors. Even queens must sleep, though in this new age of salt and gold, dreams would come at a price paid in screams and surf. Bash. Hash. In the far north, beneath a vault of pale stars, Jon Snow studied a raven's message by the flicker of a brazier in Winterfell's great hall. The parchment smelled of damp wax and desperation. Sansa hovered nearby, arms wrapped around herself, though the room was warm. "She's given the rock to Greyjoy?" she asked, disbelief cracking her composure. Has Cersei lost what little mind she had left? Jon's jaw tightened. She has not lost it, only bartered it. Euron's fleet gives her teeth at sea and now claws on land. If he truly holds the rock, he controls gold mines enough to fund a decade of war. Now, our armies are weary, Sansa whispered. We barely repelled the dead, only to face southern madness anew. Jon folded the letter. We cannot sit idle. If the north finds itself trapped between lion and kraken, our people will drown in the crossfire. He rubbed the healed scar at his chest, a phantom reminder of blades, betrayal, and resurrection. Send ravens to Riverrun, to the Vale, to the Reach factions not yet sworn. We need allies, honest ones. And who is honest now? Sansa asked, voice soft. He met her gaze. We must be, if none else. Outside, the wind howled, rattling shutters like knuckles on iron doors. Winter might have broken, yet its echo remained, chilling hearts already burdened by coming storms. Bash. Hash. The next morning, Euron surveyed Casterly Rock's treasury vaults. Mountains of gold bars gleamed under torchlight, casting dazzles that danced in his lone eye. He ran gloved fingers across neatly stacked ingots, each stamped with the lion's head. All this, he murmured. And yet they forgot the world is paved in salt. A lean, hawk-nosed quartermaster stood nearby, posture rigid. Our ledgers record 80,000 ingots, my lord. Roughly 700,000 golden dragons at current coin weight. Euron turned, lips curling. Enough to fund 1,000 ships, each armed with scorpions that sing dragons from the sky. He nodded to his red priests. Melt 10,000. Reforge them into kraken-clad hull plating. The quartermaster blanched. But my lord, that gold belongs to House Lannister and... Belonged, Euron corrected. Now it serves. Does your loyalty lie in ledgers or life? A priest advanced, torch tilting. The quartermaster swallowed. Life, my lord. Good. Euron faced the gleaming mounds again. Let the realm learn. A lion's roar may shake earth, but the sea swallows mountains whole. Bash. Hash. That evening, as red priests sketched pyres of driftwood along the rock's western beaches, Tyrion's galley slipped unseen into the mouth of the Mander, bound northward. He leaned on the railing, quill scratching parchment beneath a hooded lantern. Words spilled swift and tight, coiled with urgency. A letter to Daenerys urging immediate alliance, another to Yara Greyjoy counting on old debts, a third to Bronn, because even Sellsword loyalty might tip scales. Above him, the sky faded to bruised purple. Stars flicked awake like candles at window shutters. Tyrion sealed the letters with wax and the Kraken Lion's sigil had hastily sketched, irony not lost on him. If ever the realm needed clever men, he muttered. Now is that cursed hour. Varys appeared, silent as always. Crows feast first on the dead, the eunuch said, watching the darkening river. Let us ensure we do not gift them our bones. Tyrion slipped letters into a leather satchel. Lord Reaper, he mused aloud. Euron's title stinks of graves. Cersei forgets. When you invite a reaper, he seldom asks whom to harvest. No, Varys agreed. He simply begins. Tyrion's gaze drifted across shadowed banks where willows swayed like mourners. Somewhere ahead, the torches of another port glimmered, promising uncertain refuge. Then we must begin as well, he whispered, before the harvest claims us all. Bash. Hash. Far beneath Casterly Rock, deeper than even the Subacious vault, a cavern nobody living remembered yawned in eternal dark. Here pillars of quartz rose like ghostly trees, and subterranean rivers carved crystal ribs into the walls. Euron alone walked this abyss, torch guiding him through blackness. At the cavern's center waited a tarnished throne of fused swords, dwarfed echo of Aegon's iron seat, fashioned centuries ago by the first Lannisters, abandoned when its barbs proved too cruel for civilized derrieres. Rust wept from its blades, yet still, they gleamed malevolence. Euron approached, trailing salt droplets that hissed on cold stone. He traced a gauntlet across a jagged plume of steel. Even lions once worshipped pain, he mused. How quickly they forgot. He settled onto the throne. Its edges bit his armor with hungry kisses. Blood seeped anew where earlier cut had sealed. He closed his eye, inhaled the metal's sour tang, and listened, not with ears, but with that inner sense honed among the smoking ruins of Valyria and in the silence of blackened moons. The cavern breathed. Something old stirred, older than lions, older than krakens, older perhaps than light. Euron smiled softly. Wake then, he whispered. The world above dreams it knows terror. We shall teach it true dread. The throne's blades vibrated, faint hum rising like distant war horns. Outside, waves smashed cliffs with sudden ferocity. Gulls spiraled in panicked flocks, and somewhere across an ocean of night, a dragon sleeping beneath ash might have twitched, sensing a rival dawn. Bash. Hash. Morning broke over a realm shifting like sand beneath a restless tide. In King's Landing, whispers spread through flea-bottom alleys. The rock was lost to the Kraken. Gold would soon flood dockyards, and a queen's favor could be bought with blood's-licked coin. In Highgarden's shattered arbor, Lady Olenna's surviving kin plotted impossible revenge. In Dorne's scorched deserts, princelings weighed opportunity against memory of burned alliances. In the far-off free cities, sailors raised cups to Euron's name, toasting the day the Sunset Sea answered to Greyjoy command. Within Casterly Rock, trumpets blared. Euron Greyjoy, clad in his half-gold armor, strode to the Sunspire balcony overlooking the western approach. Below, rank upon rank of Lannister soldiers knelt, crimson cloaks rippling. Each wore a black Kraken badge pinned beside the lion. Behind them, townsfolk bowed heads beneath banners now twined, lion and Kraken locked in strangling embrace. Euron lifted a hand. The clamorous trumpets fell silent. Today, he called, voice rolling across granite like thunder, you stand at the cusp of rebirth, no longer mere lions guarding crumbling hordes. You are predators reborn in salt and shadow. With your queen's blessing, I guide you beyond horizons golden eyes have never seen. Together we shall carve legend into continents uncharted, and every way will echo our roar. A roar indeed erupted, half cheer, half desperate. It reverberated between cliff walls, soared skyward, and tumbled out to sea. Euron drank their fervor like wine, feeling that old itch, the pull of wind-whipped decks, of conquest courting oblivion. He turned, meeting Cersei's gaze where she watched unseen through an arrow slit, and inclined his head. She nodded once, expression unreadable. The realm balanced on a blade's breath. Somewhere to the north, Jon Snow marshaled letters. Somewhere upon roads dusted gold with early summer pollen, Tyrion plotted subterfuge. Dragons circled distant currents, sensing smoke rising where there should be none. And beneath Casterly Rock, the ancient throne of rusted blades still hummed, its song low and hungry, as though eager for the cadence of marching boots and the coppery taste of spilled blood to complete its forgotten chorus. Bash. Hash. Thus began the reign of the Lord Reaper of Casterly Rock, forged in secrecy, sealed in blood, and heralded by the communion of lion and kraken. The wind carried his name across seas and rivers, through castles and hovels alike, until even children in straw beds dreamt uneasy dreams of black sails blotting sunsets. Yet in those early days, before real war arrived to test oaths and sinew, the greatest battles were fought in whispers, in council chambers, in whining-soaked inns, in the hearts of men who wondered whether gold might yet outshine the darkness rising from the deep. And in that hush, the deep answered with a promise. What had risen would not be quenched by mere light, nor by the proud roar of any beast that walked the land. For salt will have its due, and the tide, once turned, cares little for thrones built of bone or gold. Bash. Hash. The next chapter waits, coiled like a sea serpent beneath placid waves, ready to surge. Dawn seeped into Casterly Rock with reluctant fingers, softening the jagged towers and battlements to gentle amber before the day's heat could bake salt into every crack. In the newly claimed Lord Solar, Euron Greyjoy reclined upon a chaise stitched from lion pelts, one boot propped on the polished skull of a long-dead Rain, who had once dared oppose Tywin. A harpist plucked tentative notes nearby, each string trembling as if it felt the kraken's gaze. Euron absently swirled wine the color of bruised twilight, studying the dark whirlpool spiraling inside the goblet. His thoughts drifted beyond stone walls toward open sea, to horizons where the world blurred into myth. Land reeked of confinement. Even this towering citadel felt a tomb compared with the roll of decks beneath his feet. He set the cup down. Play something bold, he told the harpist. A tune that would coax leviathans from the deep. The harpist's fingers fumbled, found a fiercer chanty. A melody spun of ironborn raids and midnight screams. The notes skittered up the Solar's rafters like gulls startled from carrion. Euron closed his eye and sank into the cadence, letting imagination drown in rhythm. Masts cracking under sky-maddened winds, scimitars clashing with brass-ringed shields, slaves weeping prayers into pitch-black holds. All his triumphs tasted better with the ocean spray on his tongue. A door creaked. Lady Jenna entered, face drawn but composed. She curtsied without bowing her head, a subtlety not lost on Euron. "My Lord Reaper," she began, voice polished by decades of courtly burden. "The mines send word. Production lags. The ore veins nearest the surface are nearly spent, and deeper tunnels face collapses without new reinforcements." "Dawn." Euron opened his eye, calm as a tide pool. "Order them deeper. Such excavations require timbers, iron brackets, fresh laborers, supplies that must travel leagues. Delays will spook investors. Coins vanish when confidence falters." He rose and crossed to a wide balcony overlooking the western vista, where cranes hoisted crates of cannon shot stamped with kraken sigils onto ox-drawn wagons. "There are no investors, my lady. Only subjects. If the mines starve, the subjects dig harder. If they break, we replace them." He traced a finger along the balustrade, smearing powdered marble. "Gold is like blood. It clots unless pumped vigorously." Lady Jenna swallowed. "The lions have always ruled by craft as much as claw, my lord. A careful word earns more than a lash." Euron smiled. "And sometimes a lash speaks when words cannot." He turned, cloak whispering. "Send your miners this gift. 100 barrels of salt pork, 1,000 skins of strong wine, and a chest of bright baubles. They will feast, sing, and, when hungover, dig like devils to repay indulgence. Any who refuse shall taste the whip. That is craft and claw." "No." Jenna's lips twitched in grudging acceptance. She recognized Tywin's ghost in those tactics. "As you command. Also," Euron added, strolling back inside, "dispatch ravens to every coastal village from Fair Isle to Casey. Offer silver for any bastard sons eager to prove themselves. Promise them endless loot and a chance to carve their names into history. We shall draft a new corps of reavers, ironborn blood diluted with Westerland metal. A hybrid crew for a hybrid age." "No." Jenna inclined her head and withdrew. The harpist's tune faltered, erupted into silence. Euron gestured. "Go," he said softly. "Tell others you survived an audience. Let them wonder why." The harpist fled, leaving the solar echoing with faint string reverberations that faded like retreating surf. Euron lifted his goblet, drained it, and imagined the rock uprooting itself, sailing westward atop swollen waves like some colossal drifting fortress. He entertained the fantasy until the scent of aging stone reminded him dreams must be hammered into steel. Hundreds of leagues north, Winterfell's great hall simmered with tension. Jon Snow stood at the long oak table, parchment maps unfurled before him. Thick candles bled wax onto disputed borders drawn in hastily rubbed charcoal. Sigils of wolf, trout, and falcon overlapping in uneasy convergence. Davos Seaworth, grizzled and road-weary, leaned over Jon's shoulder, pointing with his maimed fingertips. "The Vale Lords will send grain and men if Sansa pledges marriage to young Lord Robert," Davos murmured. "Not my place to opine, but the lad's as frail as a sparrow. He needs stalwart guidance." "Nancy?" Sansa stiffened where she sat, fingers steepled. "Guidance is not a synonym for chains, Lord Davos. I will not barter myself for swords." Jon met his sister's gaze, remembered the naive girl who'd once dreamed of crown princes, and saw instead a woman of iron and frost. "We ask for alliance, not cages," he said. "Yet we cannot face a united lion-kraken front alone. Words win fewer wars than armies." "Then shift the battleground," piped Arya, lounging on a window ledge sharpening needle. "Cut off Euron's legs before he steadies them. A reaper on land is half a monster. Drown him in fields where oars cannot reach." "Dan?" Bran, wheeled in near the hearth, spoke in his distant whisper. "Euron's roots run deeper than stone. He is not merely man but storm-wearing flesh. To break a storm you redirect wind." Silence followed, thick as sleep. Jon raked hair from his face. "Cryptic advice aside, we have two choices. Assault Casterly Rock before Euron fortifies, or sever his sea supply. Both demand ships we lack." Davos cleared his throat. "The sistermen owe your house safe passage, and Lady Lyanna Mormont will lend whatever longships Bear Island can spare." "Nurse." Sansa's gaze drifted to the window, where gray daylight kissed banners flapping in stiff breeze. "We gather wolves and bears, yet we need dragons. Without Daenerys, every scheme is but pup's play." Jon's chest tightened. He had sent ravens to Dragonstone. No reply yet blackened the skies. He feared Daenerys wrestled kingdoms of her own making, if she lived. Word of her last defeat beneath Volantis still tasted bitter. He pressed a fist to the maps. "We carry on until the dragons roar or our hearts fall silent." Arya slid from her perch, blade sheathing with a hiss. "Perhaps hearts need not fall silent if a lone dagger sings first." Sansa's brow furrowed. "No dagger will breach Casterly Rock. Better to court Yara Greyjoy. Euron stole her crown. She'll answer blood with blood." Jon nodded slowly. "Send word. Tell her the time to reclaim the Seastone chair is now." In the Reach, among vineyards resurrected from Tarly pillage, Samwell Tarly studied scrolls inside a sun-splashed sept at Honeyholt. The half-rebuilt sept's stained glass windows cast rainbow shards across Sam's parchment. Montage of family trees, shipping manifests, and Valyrian glyphs. Heartsbane, reforged and newly polished, rested upon the table's edge like a slumbering lion. Gilly hushed little Sam in the corner while Samwell's quill scratched furiously. He connected lines between sigils, kraken to lion, lion to crown, crown to wildfire, until a spiderweb of looming catastrophe spidered across the parchment. He whispered, "If Euron gains Lannister ore and Lannister engineers, he could mount scorpions longer than a whale's spine onto every dreadship. Even dragons might bleed." A figure emerged from shadowed colonnades. Ser Jorah Mormont, travel-stained, one sleeve stitched hastily over a deep gash. "Then we must warn the Queen," he said. Sam startled. "You found her?" "Beyond the Jade Gates," Jorah rasped. "Her fleet limps westward. Half her Dothraki drowned when ships keeled in storms conjured by red sorcery. She hunts a safe harbor to mend wings. Sam pushed scrolls aside. Send her maesters ravens. Tell her to turn toward Dragonstone. We will rally the Reach. And I, he swallowed, stealing courage, will sail with Heartsbane in hand. The world forgets the power of Valyrian steel when wielded by those unafraid. Yora's eyes gleamed with grim respect. Then we ride to Old Town, seize any vessel daring enough, and outrun the Kraken. Gilly stood, pressing a ribbon of blue cloth into Sam's palm. For luck, she said. He kissed her brow, heart hammering. He had once fled his father's wrath. Now he marched to face a nightmare wearing the stolen rock like a crown. Strange how destiny looped on itself, a knot drawing tighter with each flight. Within Casterly Rock's refurbished war room, a domed gallery whose ceiling depicted the Age of Heroes, Qyburn poured viscous green liquid from a stoppered vial onto a bronze plate. It hissed, 8 tiny holes through metal before protective powder neutralized it. Cersei watched, chin cupped by gloved hand, languid and lethal. Joffrey adored wildfire, she murmured. Said it looked like dragon's breath. Imagine his delight if he'd lived to see kraken scales coated in this. Qyburn wiped sweat from his pallid brow. Indeed, your grace, the alchemists redoubled production beneath your generous endowments. However, I must caution. Transporting wildfire across treacherous sea routes risks catastrophe. Cersei's lips curved, the warmth never reached her eyes. Catastrophe is a tool wielded by the foolish or the bold. I count myself the latter. Euron lounged across the room. Polishing a longsword forged of pale gray steel with ripples like river currents. Send your jars, he said, voice playful. We shall cage wildfire in iron caskets, packed with salt water to quench accidents. My priests bless each crate. The Lord of Light devours lesser flames. Mestimiawa. Cersei regarded him, curious. You place trust in gods now. I trust only chaos, Euron answered, which gods kindly bestow. Cersei drifted closer, heels clicking. Jon Snow rallies northerners, Dragon Queen rumored alive, and my treacherous brother slithers through rivers like a rat. Every shadow lengthens, yet you smile. Why? Euron set aside the blade, stood, and cupped her jaw with fingers rough as driftwood. Because war is seduction, writ large. The more foes join the dance, the more glorious the climax. Soon dragons will scream over the rock, and I shall chain their fire to my will, or feed cliffs with their bones. Cersei felt her skin prickle beneath his touch, half dread, half arousal. She stepped back. You misjudge dragons if you think them easily tamed. He laughed. A sound like surf striking hollow caves. All things bleed, even leggings. 2 nights later, Tyrion Lannister's band of outlaws skirted the rain-slick foothills east of Lannisport. Pale half-moon glowered through shredded clouds, silvering the hillsides in the ragged cloaks of his companions. Bronn Crossbow Slum, Podrick Payne, ever loyal, and informer Goldcloaks disenchanted with the crown. They stopped at a ridge where lantern lights of the port flickered below like fireflies drowning in mist. The odor of tar and fish wafted up. Tyrion crouched, spyglass in hand, studying the silhouettes of Euron's dreadships anchored at the outer breakwater. Their hulls bristled with new ballistae, sleek spines inflected by Westerosi engineering and ironborn brutality. Bronn spat. Looks like a hedgehog slept with a sea monster. Tyrion's jaw clenched. Casterly Rock's wealth wrought those abominations. My family's gold funds my family's ruin. Poetic profanity. He handed the glass to Podrick, who peered through and gasped. There, sir. See the chain nets coiled on decks to catch dragons? Tyrion's stomach nodded. He thought of Daenerys of searing skyfire, and of ash raining upon the innocent. We must sabotage those ballistae before the fleet sails. Bronn, can you swim? Bronn gave a humorless chuckle. I can drown better than most. What's the pay? And survival, Tyrion answered, eyes reflecting moon-silvered sails. And the gratitude of a kingdom, should one survive to pay. One day, Bronn muttered. Gratitude will buy me my castle. Tyrion clapped him on the arm. Let's steal a kingdom first, then haggle for castles. They descended the slope like wraiths, weapons swaddled in waxed cloth to mute clinks, hearts thudding to the chorus of waves, hammering breakwaters. The tide smelled of rotting kelp and destiny. Deep inside the subaceous vault, the sacrifice began. Red priests encircled an obsidian altar carved with writhing krakens, whose tentacles ended in lion claws. Blue flames flickered from sconces filled with oily resin. The mute thralls were brought forth. Copper wires still sewed their lips, though eyes rolled white as eggshell. Priests sliced their wrists, letting dark blood drip into a bowl carved of dragon bone. Euron oversaw from a lofted dais, pupils dilated in rapture. He had exchanged his gold-inked armor for undyed linen, freshly soaked in seawater. Priest Corydon raised the bowl toward him. Blood of surf and storm, sanctify the rock that would ride waves. Euron descended, dipping fingers into the crimson. He painted sigils on his eyelids, cheeks, and the altar. The rock will break, he intoned. And from its shards, a new world will breathe salt. Cersei observed unseen from a narrow ventilation shaft high above. Qyburn beside her scribbling notes. Her stomach churned at the metallic odor, yet fascination rooted her. She whispered, "If his magic thrives, he may indeed snare dragons." Qyburn's pen scratched. "Magic is but science without comprehension, Your Grace. Study yields countermeasures." Lenizarsen mourned. She nodded, though doubt licked her spine. Euron's rituals felt older than Valyria, older perhaps than the Seven or the Red God. To command such forces, one must pay debts counted in more than coin. On the altar, Corydon passed a shard of dragonglass through braziers until its edge glowed ember orange, then plunged it into the chest of a thrall. The thrall convulsed soundlessly, copper stitches tearing. Blood hissed against the altar, steam curling like mournful spirits. The cavern trembled. Stalactites rattled. Cersei pressed a hand to her heart. "Proceed," she whispered to the dark, unsure whether she urged the ritual's completion or its abrupt end. At sea, far west of the Shield Islands, Yara Greyjoy's flagship. The widow's wail cut through swells beneath a ragged sky. Storm clouds bruised the horizon. Forks of lightning clawed distant waters. Yara gripped the railing, salt spray whipping her cheeks. At her side, Theon urged caution. "Euron owns the rock now," he said, voice strained. "He'll expect you." Yara barked a sharp laugh. "He expects the iron price, not the daughter he cast aside." She spat overboard. "Ravens claim he forges scorpion bows big enough to gut krakens. Let him. We will strike before his bolts cock." A raven circled, landing on the mizzenmast crosstree, scroll bound to its leg, Jon Snow's seal. Yara signaled a deckhand. Moments later, she unrolled the parchment beneath a lantern sputter, reading Jon's plea for alliance against Euron. Her gray eyes sharpened. "The wolf needs the kraken's bite," she mused. Theon shifted weight. "Jon helped us once." Yara nodded. "And dragons may soar beside him. If we cripple Euron's fleet, we claim Pike's throne with foreign banners at our backs." She folded the letter. "Lay a course for Bear Island. We make port, resupply, and parley with the north." She turned, voice rising over wind. "Signal the flotilla. Full sail north-northeast." Deckhands scrambled. Sails thudded under gusts. Lightning sheeted the sky, illuminating black masts like skeletal fingers. In Old Town, the Citadel's bell tolled midnight as Sam and Jorah strode through cloisters toward the harbor. A courier intercepted them, breathless. "Samwell Tarly, urgent letter from Lord Tyrion Lannister." Sam broke the black wax. He skimmed lines. "Sabotage underway. Ask Reach rebels to harry Lannisport. Delay Euron." He turned to Jorah. "We must postpone our departure. If Tyrion cripples the dreadships, we strike before repairs." Jorah frowned. "Every delay gives Euron time to arm the rock." "We'll divide," Sam decided. "You sail for Dragonstone. I ride to gather Reach levies, Tarletons, Merryweathers, Fossaways. We choke Lannisport's roads, burn his supply caravans." Jorah clasped Sam's shoulder. Be swift. Dragons hunger for allies. Now. Sam nodded, feeling Heartsbane's weight across his back. He never expected to lead men into battle, yet he carried the burden as though born to it. Fat shoulders squared, resolve steeled by knowledge hard won in dusty tomes. That same night, Tyrion and Bronn swam under starlight thick with spindrift. They clung to barnacle-encrusted pilings of Euron's flagship Silence, where hull plates gleamed with newly hammered gold filigree. Lanterns hung from gunwales above, but the water's slap masked their breaths. Tyrion's teeth chattered, wine-soaked bravery had fled, leaving only stark lucidity. Bronn unslung a satchel of black powder. Find the magazine. Set the fuse. Pray the tides on our side. They hauled themselves onto the kelp-slick rudder chain, then onto a service platform. Tyrion's short stature aided stealth. He darted between crates stenciled with Kraken sigils. Bronn slit tarps, revealing casks of wildfire secured in iron cages. Qyburn's handiwork. Tyrion exhaled raggedly. Madness multiplied. Bronn whistled, softly impressed. One arrow here, and this harbor turns to green hell. Tyrion produced a clay vial of lamp oil, smearing it across fuse rope wound through the casks, securing chains. We aim not to slaughter sailors, but cripple Euron's fangs. He lit a stub of sulfur match. Flame flowered. Footsteps clanged on deck above. Voices barked in Pike's harsh accents. Tyrion's pulse hammered. Bronn yanked him toward the railing, and together they dove into black water as flame raced the rope into shadows. Moments later, a dull thump reverberated through the hull. Then a deafening roar as wildfire casks erupted. An emerald bloom burst skyward, scorching night. Shockwaves hurled water into walls that slammed moored ships against each other. Men screamed, lanterns shattered. Flames skittered across oil slicks, igniting rigging. Tyrion surfaced amid floating debris, ears ringing. He saw the Silence listing, midships engorged in green fire that crackled with shrieking dragons' cries. Chains snapped, its mainmast toppled like felled timber. Bronn surfaced beside him, coughing. Subtle, he rasped. Tyrion grinned through salt and smoke. A lion's roar, borrowed from dragons. They struck out for shore as chaos engulfed the harbor. Sailors leaping, scorpions toppling into waves, shock-slapped gulls wheeling hysterically. In the rock's throne chamber, Cersei jolted awake as tremors shook chandeliers. Dust cascaded from carved lions overhead. She rose, heart slamming, as a messenger stumbled in, tunic scorched. Your Grace, Lannisport burns. The Silence aflame, half the fleet in ruin. Euron stormed in moments later, face livid, seawater dripping from hair. Sabotage, he spat. The dwarf crawls where rats scurry. Cersei scowled, yet beneath anger flickered fear. Can you rebuild before dragons arrive? Euron's breath came hot, ragged. I need time and blood. Cersei looked toward the shuttered windows, imagining green fire staining the western sky. You have both, she said. Just don't lose this war in the dark. Euron's smile returned razor-keen. Wars thrive in darkness, my queen. I merely dragged them there. He spun, cloak swirling, and strode out to rally survivors. Far below, prisoners screamed as priests hurried new rites, blood sacrifices to hasten repairs. As dawn bled across shattered Lannisport, Tyrion hid in an abandoned granary with Bronn and their band. Acrid smoke seeped through cracks. Distant bells rang futile alarms. Tyrion recited casualty sums like prayers. 9 Dreed ships crippled, 5 sunk, hundreds dead. The Silence mortally wounded. Bronn bandaged a cut on Podrick's arm. Hell rebuild, but not before we sow more seeds. Tyrion unfurled a map. Euron's supply lines run through Casey and Castamere mines. We sever one vein, the rock starves. Mer. Bronn chuckled. We're a handful of vagabonds, not an army. Armies rally to banners, Tyrion replied, eyes gleaming. We raise a banner of vengeance, lions betrayed by their queen. Westerland's small folk still loyal to my house will flock to ours once they see Casterly rocks, gold funding foreign tyrants. We need only spark rebellion. Podrick straightened. Sir, if we recite the reigns of Castamere in taverns, hearts might stir. Tyrion considered, then smiled sadly. Let the rains fall again. Far east, dragons wheeled above a battered fleet, limping toward Dragonstone. Daenerys Targaryen stood at her flagship's prow, silver gold hair whipping around a crownless brow. Drogon soared overhead, scales flashing crimson in dawn's glow. She watched the distant outline of her ancestral fortress emerge from morning mist, black volcanic stone jutting like a fist from the sea. Jorah stood beside her, cloak stiff with salt. Ravens reached us. Euron holds the rock. Cersei bleeds the realm. Daenerys' eyes hardened. Then we crush them. We burn kraken nests, melt lion dens, and forge a realm freed of chains. Ned's wrath. Jorah bowed. Allies gather. Jon Snow calls upon you. A tremor gentled her anger. She thought of Jon's dark eyes, of snow melting on dragonfire. She nodded. Prepare parley. But first, Dragonstone must remember its queen. Winds carried the dragon's roars across Blackwater Bay. Fishermen on distant shores knelt in reverent terror as three behemoths banked toward ancient battlements. War brewed, storm and flame conjoined. Within the cavern of rusted blades, Euron knelt upon cracked stone before the iron echo throne, head bowed. He wore no armor, only blood-smeared linens. The air tasted metallic. Violet motes drifted like embers, though no fire burned. A voice older than waves whispered at the edges of hearing, not speech but sensation, promises of world-breaker power. Euron's heart pounded, each beat aligning with the throne's hummed resonance. He lowered a dagger, sliced open his palm anew, and pressed bleeding flesh against a rusted blade. The throne drank greedily. In the darkness, specters stirred, memories of drowned kings, of dragon lords gone mad, of faceless gods that hungered for mortal dreams. Euron offered them Casterly rock, its bones, its gold, its quivering pride. In exchange, he demanded a storm fierce enough to rend sky from earth. The cavern shuddered. High above, cliffs groaned, fissures spidering through marble halls. Unseen waves struck with titan force, cracking coastal arches. Euron lifted his head, crimson dripping down his chin. He laughed. A deep, resonant boom. Yes, he breathed. Rise with me. Afternoon sun baked the courtyard where Lady Jenna oversaw refugee tents swelling like mushrooms against the rock's walls. Families fleeing Lannisport flames. She directed healers while gold-cloaked soldiers distributed crusts of bread. Yet each loaf handed away felt like a grain of sand slipping through her hourglass. She feared the day when hungry hands turned weapons. Her steward whispered that taxes rose, miners muttered, and blacksmiths cast axe heads by moonlight, not for the queen but for whoever offered safety. Jenna glanced up at the towering outcrop where Euron's banner flapped, a black kraken squeezing a golden lion. She sensed the banner weighed more than cloth. It foreshadowed drowning. A child tugged her hem, eyes round. Is the sea coming to eat us? Jenna crouched, smoothed the girl's hair. Not if we stand together. The girl pressed a seashell into Jenna's palm, then scampered off. Jenna stared at the shell's spiral. Beautiful, fragile, easily crushed. She tucked it inside her bodice, rose, and strode toward the inner keep. A decision crystallized. She would send secret messages to River Run and the Vale. Let Euron fear unseen claws. That night, winter gales swept southward, dragging banners of snow across Moat Cailin. Jon Snow watched from the ramparts as dark clouds swallowed starlight. He felt the old, familiar dread. Winter's breath chilled even summer hearts. Yet determination steeled him. He turned to Tormund Giantsbane, wild red beard glistening with frost, returned from scouting Deepwood Motte. Free folk want no part of southern wars, Tormund said, scratching his chin. But they owe you life. They'll march if you ask. Devin Tuanania. Jon clasped his friend's forearm. Ask them to guard the neck. If Euron sails up the Trident, we need watchful eyes. Tormund grinned. Eyes we got. Stink may be worse than Kraken, but sharper. Jon smiled faintly. He gazed southward, where horizon blended into storm. Somewhere beyond that darkness, dragons wheeled, lions schemed, krakens coiled. The world hurtled toward catastrophe, each faction believing itself predator while unknowingly prey. He breathed cold air, tasting iron and ash. "Let the storms come," he whispered. "A Stark weathers every season." In Casterly Rock's highest tower, Cersei lay sleepless upon silken sheets. She listened to the sea pounding cliffs, as though accusing her. Memories surfaced unbidden. Jaime's laughter, Myrcella's shy smile, Tommen's small hand clutching hers. Loss coiled around her ribs like barbed wire. Power had become her opiate and her tormentor. It promised rebirth yet delivered only ghosts. She rose, donned a robe, and stepped onto a moon-washed balcony. Below, torches dotted parapets in uneasy constellations. Somewhere down in dark courtyards, Euron's priests murmured to flames that burned without smoke. She felt the rock's heartbeat altered. Heavy, arrhythmic, reflecting not the pulse of lions but the thrumming of deep water. Cersei clenched the railing. "I will not become a cautionary tale," she told the night. "I will sit the throne when ashes settle, and the song of the Kraken will end when I command it." A voice drifted behind her, Euron's. "Even queens cannot silence the sea, only ride its swells." She did not turn. "A rider can drown a mount. Remember that." "Nan." He stepped beside her, moonlight silvering his stubbled jaw. "We dance on razors, you and I, but razors gleam brightest before cutting." Cersei glanced at him. "Just be certain the blood spilled isn't mine." He touched her cheek with salt-rough fingers. "All blood belongs to the tide eventually." She captured his wrist, nails digging. "Not tonight." Euron's smile remained, yet something ancient flickered in his eye. An abyss no mortal could fathom. He freed his wrist, bowed with theatrical flourish, and vanished into the tower's gloom. Cersei released a breath she did not know she'd held. The sea thundered louder, as if mocking her resolve. She turned back to the horizon, where faint green auroras, afterglow of burning wildfire, still shimmered against blackness. In those eerie lights, she glimpsed the shape of her own ruin, vast and inescapable. And yet she whispered to the wind, "Come then, fate. I have beaten worse monsters than you." The wind answered with a scream that might have been gull or ghost. At daybreak, ravens burst from the rookery at Casterly Rock in frantic clouds. One bore a letter sealed with Lady Jenna's hastily accorded lion, bound for River Run. Another with a broken wax imprint, Cersei's seal surreptitiously copied, sped toward King's Landing. A third, plain and unmarked, winged north. By noon, arrows fell too, but not before they cleared Cliff Tableau. The third escaped into slate skies. Below, Jenna Lannister watched the rookery doors slam open as a keeper emerged. Pale, she slipped away before alarm rose. Her gamble had begun. On a nameless beach south of Seaguard, Samwell Tarly rallied 200 levies. Farmhands, vintners, even septons, into makeshift columns. Heartsbane rested across his shoulders. He addressed them, voice quavering but resolute. "We fight not for crowns but for hearths threatened by dragon slayers and sea reavers. We show the realm the Reach still has heart." Cheering erupted, ragged but sincere. Sam felt weight lift, fear eclipsed by purpose. He signaled banners to rise. Green strata with golden sheaves. The old sigil of House Tarly before pride soured it. Horses stamped. Sun glittered on mismatched helms. Sam's throat tightened with awe and dread. "Forward," he ordered. "To the rock's shadow." In Dragonstone's war room, Daenerys and Jon at last stood face to face across a rough-hewn table. Candlelight danced across maps peppered with new pins. Kraken banners spread along the western coast, lion claws surrounding them in uneasy alliance. Daenerys' cheeks flushed with cautious hope as Jon recounted sabotage at Lannisport, rebellion whispers, Yara's fleet, Sam's militia. "We strike while Euron reels," she concluded. "Dragons torch his remaining dreadships before repairs. Northerners storm from landward side. Reach levies cut south escape. We trapped the Kraken in his stolen den." Jon met her gaze. "The rock is near impregnable, but if dragons open the gates..." Drogon rumbled outside, as though hearing his name. Daenerys placed a hand on map's western edge. "I will fly. Rhaegal with me, Viserion guards Dragonstone. We decapitate their scorpions. You breach tunnels Tywin once used to drown the rains." Tyrion stepped from shadows. "I know those passages. I'll guide Jon's vanguard." Daenerys nodded, eyes warm with pride at the dwarf who'd survived wildfires. "Then, fate circles its prey." Jon curled a fist. "And we strike true." That evening, far above Casterly Rock, clouds blackened like spilled ink. Thunderheads twisted into maelstrom shapes, though no natural front approached. Fishermen in Lannisport stared upward, crossing themselves as wind died, and a hush fell heavy as burial shrouds. Lightning flickered within cloud depths, violet not white. Inside the rock, Euron stood upon Sunspire balcony, arms outstretched, linen robes whipping in sudden gusts. He chanted words older than tide pools, syllables slithering between worlds. The storm answered, coalescing directly above the fortress, forming an eye luminous with sickly light. From its center, thin tendrils of lightning licked battlements, kissing gold in crackling ecstasy. Cersei watched from the highest tower, horror calcifying her features. "You'll bring the fortress down." Euron's laughter carried on the gale. "I bring the world to its knees." Below, soldiers fled indoors, banners torn away. The sea heaved, waves rising till they struck the cliffs in Leviathan crescendos. Water sprang high enough to drench merlons. Stones trembled. Cracks widened in courtyards. Deep within caverns, the rusted throne rang like a hammer on anvil. And out beyond storm's rim, 3 dark shapes surged through cloudbreak. Dragons riding thermals of unnatural energy. Their roars fused with thunder, heralding war at world's edge. Upon Drogon's neck, Daenerys leaned forward, silver hair whipping into a comet tail. In her eyes burned purpose and fury, twin torches aflame. Behind her, Jon rode Rhaegal, cloak snapping, sword at his hip. The dragons banked, wings riffling through charged air. Euron raised hands, beckoning. "Come, Fireborn, let us taste eternity." Cersei stared, torn between awe and terror, as the sky ignited with oncoming flame. And beneath, in forgotten tunnels, Tyrion Lannister placed a hand upon cold stone door hidden behind lion relief, listening to distant echoes of thunder and dragons. He looked at Jon's vanguard, wildlings, Northmen, disillusioned Westerlanders, faces lit by oil lamps. He whispered, "Time to pay ancestral debts." The door groaned open. The invasion of Casterly Rock began. Not with a clarion trumpet, but with the hush of conspirators stepping into darkness, chasing a future yet unclaimed. The storm above howled its welcome, a hymn to chaos. Gei ka Eabin. Rhaegal's emerald wings carved vapor trails through the charged sky, green flames licking at the roiling thunderheads as Jon bent low against the warm ridge of the dragon's spine. In front of him, Drogon thundered ahead, a living eclipse with Daenerys poised between his shoulder blades, silver hair crackling with the storm's stolen lightning. Below, the world fractured. Tidal plumes breaching the cliff face, Casterly Rock's red gold towers flickering like candles, about to gutter out. A swarm of torch flecks racing along battlements as soldiers scrambled to man scorpions whose limbs rattled in the wind. The storm Euron had birthed resisted dragonfire at first. Drogon exhaled a torrent blazing white at the core. But the moment the cone struck the swirling cloud, violet tendrils of lightning crackled back along the flames, forcing him to shear away with a screech of irritation. Rhaegal followed, banking as hurled ballista bolts hissed past, one glancing off the hardened scales between Jon's boots, with a clang that rang up his bones. On the balcony of the Sunspire, Euron stood spread-armed. Eyes rolled so far back that only the white showed, a ragged grin carved across his face. The storm's nexus hovered above him like a halo from some blasphemous saint, its core a gaping eye of violet brightness. Sparks leapt from his fingertips to the stone, and at each spark, scorpion crews flinched, their wooden frames vibrating as though puppeted by the same invisible strings. Cersei watched from the high gallery window, knuckles white on a steel balustrade. Every strike of dragonfire, every crash of sea against rock, every thunderclap blooming overhead felt as if it bloomed in her skull. She looked down into the courtyard where Qyburn directed a caravan of ox carts bearing sealed green jars toward the cliff-edge trebuchets. Fire to fight fire, poison to fight monsters. Her father had once scoffed at alchemist folly. Tonight she clutched it like a gambler's lost coin. In the under-siege harbor of Lannisport, flames still guttered among the wreckage of the night's sabotage. Smoke slicked the dawn-pink horizon, and through it Yara Greyjoy's vanguard of longships emerged. Black sails billowing. They drifted close to shore, avoiding half-sunken dreadships, their decks bristling with armored ironborn, and a scattering of Northmen archers borrowed from Bear Island. Yara stood at her prow, axes crossed over her chest. The moment Rhaegal and Drogon swept overhead, she roared the order to drop the skiffs. Dozens of narrow boats splashed into water, rowers hauling hard for the stone-hewn stair that zigzagged up to the rock's water gate. In the twisting tunnels beneath the fortress, Tyrion led Jon's ground spearhead forward, lamp soot streaking his cheeks. The passage walls were damp, mineral veins glinting dully. He paused at a branching fork, reading faint chisel marks he remembered from boyhood. Left climbed to the old mines where Tywin concealed his first reservoir of wildfire. Right led to the sept of the first forge. Now Euron's sacrificial vault. Tyrion hesitated. The plan had been to rally miners and prisoners in revolt, but wildfire caches could turn the battle at a breath. He sent 2 wildlings slinking left with fuse cord and instructions, then guided the bulk of the force right. As they moved, tremors rumbled overhead, stone grating, dust puffing down. Far above, Drogon dove again, this time angling lower. Daenerys leaned forward, jaw set, and hissed a guttural command in Valyrian. Drogon spat a blasting column of fire that ripped straight across the parapet, incinerating a line of scorpions before Euron's storm could lash back. Watchtowers crumbled, lacquered timbers exploding like bundles of kindling. Men leapt, became silhouettes engulfed by roiling orange. Rhaegal followed with a strafing run, green-gold jets fanning across crenellations, and Jon felt the satisfying jolt of impact answer up Rhaegal's frame. Ballista bolts continued to streak skyward. Fewer now, but still deadly. One bolt, tip rippling black glass, punched into Rhaegal's left wing where 2 membranes met. The dragon shrieked, banking hard. Jon nearly slipped, but thrust Longclaw into a scale ridge, holding fast. He glimpsed the gunners, Euron's red priests, standing fearless amid the wreckage, their eyes molten gold as they reloaded for a second shot, chanting tongues that made his blood shiver. Before they could fire, a green streak from beneath. Wildfire launched by Cersei's trebuchets, screamed upward and burst in a vivid blossom far too close to Rhaegal's tail. Dragon and riders alike were blasted into a sudden downdraft. Wing beats staggering as sorcerous fire licked along the trailing edge. Jon forced calm through his bond, urging Rhaegal higher. The dragon steadied, smoke curling from scorched scales but flight still sure. Jon scanned the battle for Drogon, and saw the larger beast wheeling behind the storm's eye, angling for Euron himself. Euron's gaze snapped up, as Drogon dove. A bolt of the storm's own lightning cracked from the vortex, striking the dragon in his armored chest. Drogon recoiled, pain twisting his roar, but Daenerys clung, teeth gritted. She raised her arm as if beckoning the bolt sheared away. A second streak of lightning coiled down and split across Drogon's obsidian scales, but Daenerys thrust her free hand outward, palm glowing with a faint crimson radiance. The lightning arced aside at the last instant, slamming harmlessly into the ragged wall. Euron laughed aloud, delighted. He threw both arms skyward and shouted an incantation, winds rippling his robe. The storm's eye widened, violet gales howled. From its depths spilled faint shapes, rippling phantoms like translucent krakens made of storm stuff, tentacles streaming lightning. They swam downward toward dragons and castle alike. Inside the sept of the first forge, Tyrion and his vanguard burst upon a scene of horror. The obsidian altar was slick with fresh gore, thralls gutted, their blood feeding crimson channels carved into the floor. Red priests knelt in trance while between them the captured sails of silence were hung like banners, sigils soaked in serpentine oils that burned blue. Tyrion's men rushed forward, steel flashed, priests toppled. But the ritual's centerpiece remained, the rusted iron effigy of a kraken wound around a lion, eyes inset with smoldering dragon glass. Tyrion recognized the glyphs scrawled across its bronze base. While his fighters secured the chamber, he knelt, wiping grime away, muttering translations. Words of binding, words of awakening, tying storm to stone, flame to blood. If the effigy remained intact, the storm overhead would strengthen until no dragon or army could breach it. Bronn barreled in, crossbow smoking. "We done gawking?" Tyrion jabbed a finger toward the effigy. "We melt this. Find pitch, find oil, anything. Then, set fuses. If that thing sings another verse, we'll all drown in air." "Bevorti." Bronn spat, then kicked aside a brass urn of fragrant oil. Another wildling cracked amphorae of wine over the effigy's base. Torchbearers crowded, fire-licking greedy tongues up the soaked metal. Tyrion measured fuse cord, tied it to a mound of powder kegs scavenged from a storeroom. They withdrew, sparks trailing, until the cord vanished around the corner. Meanwhile, on the battlements, Lady Jenna rallied wavering Lannister soldiers around her silver mane. She hacked through a fleeing sellsword bellowing, "For the Rock and for the Realm." Her cry surprised even herself. Men who moments earlier debated retreat now formed bristling half-circles. Halberds lowered. Down the steps clattered a column of black-armored reavers bearing spiked maces, chanting Euron see him. They slammed into Jenna's line. Bronze rang on steel. Overhead, storm phantoms wove, their lightning tentacles lashing the air. When a tendril struck a reaver's helm, the metal glowed white, flesh beneath cooking to steam. Yet the reaver fought on until felled by a halberd spike to the throat. The unnatural resilience set Jenna's heart trembling. Euron's dark blessing had turned the Ironborn into demons. Out in the rocky surf, Yara's strike boats reached the stair. Archers covered their ascent, arrows fanning into clifftop defenders. The first assault wave climbed, axes cleaving at caged portcullis bars until chain pulleys buckled and the gate yawned wide. Yara bounded through, blades carving a path. She met Jenna's embattled half-circle behind the inner yawning gate and shoulder-checked a reaver aside, shouting, "Where's my bloody uncle?" Jenna swiped hair from her eyes, cheeks streaked red. Higher, weaving storms with gods he shouldn't know. Recognition flashed. Yara, once hostage here, and Jenna offered a curt nod. Lion and Kraken allies by necessity, they turned against Euron's thralls. Drogon rose through the lightning phantoms, flames billowing. Daenerys spotted wildfire trebuchets, arming another volley. She whispered into Drogon's earfold. The dragon folded wings, plunged, and opened his jaws. A sustained torrent flooded the trebuchet platform, igniting the stuffed ox carts in titanic blooms of chartreuse fire. The shock blew mortars apart, masonry cascaded off the cliff, and men tumbled screaming into foaming surf far below. Wind from the explosion hurled Drogon backward, but he regained air and soared. Rhaegal, still wounded, descended lower along the northern face, scouring the cliff with emerald fire, carving a safe corridor for the skiffs now ferrying wounded to sea. Jon steadied, eyes scanning for scorpion towers. He spotted one between twin chimneys, manned by robed priests. He signaled Rhaegal by pressure and thought. The dragon veered, talons extended, smashing the tower's top clean off. Rubble detonated in sparks of sorcery as the storm phantoms shrieked and dissolved. But Euron endured, arms beckoning waves that churned higher, smashing the sea gate Yara had just secured. Salt waters sluiced into lower courtyards, carrying debris, bodies, shattered crates. Stairs collapsed, Ironborn and Reachmen alike toppled into the frothing surge. Yara slammed her shoulder against a doorframe, yelling for rope lines. Suddenly the main portcullis behind her groaned. Tyrion's fuse had reached its charge. A subterranean boom rippled the rock. Dust burst upward through cracks. The storm overhead faltered, violet spokes stuttering. Euron's grin faltered too as he sensed the feedback of broken runes. Inside the first forge, conflagration rolled outward in a cone of molten bronze and obsidian shards. The effigy cracked, the rusted eye stones flew apart, dragon glass needles pinwheeling. Flames roared up ventilation grates, belching smoke across the citadel. Tyrion and his men crouched behind a fallen arch, ears ringing. Above them the storm's eye flickered, as though the hook tethering it to earth had snapped. Daenerys seized the opening. She signaled Drogon with a sharp cry. They banked toward the Sunspire. Euron stumbled as he felt the magic loosening. He drew a slim dagger of smoking glass, slashed his palm, and smeared blood across his eyelids, chanting louder, seeking to salvage the link. Lightning cracked again, but without focus. Drogon arrowed in, at lethal speed. At the last instant, Euron whipped skyward a blade of lightning that scored Drogon's flank. Scales flared white-hot, but the dragon barreled onward. Daenerys leapt from Drogon's back moments before impact, rolling across the stone terrace. Drogon slammed into the parapet behind, claws crunching stone. Euron staggered, cloak swirling. Blood dripped from his torn palm, sizzling. He laughed. Dragon Queen falls to her knees before a kraken. Daenerys rose, hand extended. Heat shimmered around her. Across the terrace a brazier guttered, coals fanning to renewed flame though no wind stirred. "You tread upon stolen stone, crow of the deeps," he said, voice echoing weirdly. "Leave or burn?" Euron's grin turned wolfish. He lunged, daggers in both fists now, edges smoking violet. Daenerys twisted aside. One blade glanced off her shoulder plating, scoring sparks. Drogon roared, but lightning from the residual storm pinned him, cords of electricity binding wings. Euron spun, slashing a sigil in midair. The cords tightened. Then Rhaegal's roar sounded. The green dragon soared above the terrace. Jon Snow perched low behind neck spikes. The bolt wound buried in Rhaegal's wing had broken off, blood misting the air. Yet his eyes blazed. Rhaegal drove down between Euron and Drogon, jaws clamping onto the lightning cords. The current scorched his mouth, but he bit through. Power snapped, storm phantoms shriveling into dust. Jon vaulted from Rhaegal during the descent, rolling to Daenerys' side, drawing Longclaw. The blade's Valyrian ripples glimmered dully in the half-light. Daenerys nodded, stepping left. Jon stepped right. They formed a pincer. Euron threw back his head and screamed a phrase in a tongue that rasped like broken shells. The storm shuddered. A single jagged lightning shaft speared downward for Jon. Longclaw met it. Steel screamed but did not shatter. The blade drank the electricity and glowed. Jon grunted, muscles locking, but he held, diverting the energy to ground where it burst flagstones apart. Daenerys surged forward, small dagger drawn, one of the Dothraki Arak knives gifted by the Bloodriders. She slashed across Euron's chest. The linen shirt parted, crimson welling. Euron punched her ribs with lightning-wreathed fist. Pain detonated through her, but she gripped his wrist with dragonsteel gauntlet, forcing him still. Jon stepped in, cleaving down. Longclaw bit into Euron's shoulder, cleaving halfway to breastbone. Black blood sputtered, smelling of brine. Euron laughed even as he staggered, thrusting both arms outward. The sky shrieked, storm eye collapsing, dropping a funnel of concentrated wind. It slammed the terrace, flipping broken stone and bodies. Jon and Daenerys were hurled against the parapet. Drogon broke free, interposed his massive bulk between them and the gale. Rhaegal flapped to hover, blasting a sheet of green flame that fused with Drogon's red, a swirling tornado of molten gold. It met the wind funnel and consumed it, the energies opposite in nature snuffing each other in an incandescent flash. When the glare faded, Euron was gone. Only splashes of oily blood marked the terrace. Jon pulled Daenerys to her feet. Her armor was scorched, hair half singed, but her eyes were fierce. "He's retreating to the deep passages," she hissed. Jon nodded, breath ragged. "We finish him." Below, battle still raged. Tyrion emerged with his men into the central courtyard. Just as the sea surge receded, he spotted Jenna, Yara, and a patchwork of lion, wolf, and kraken fighters holding a battered line while Reaver berserkers pushed from the inner gates. Tyrion clambered onto a toppled scorpion and cupped his hands. "The storm is broken," he shouted. "Their god is blind." "Fight," Tyr answered, ragged but galvanizing. Fresh arrows from Yara's men felled reavers whose unnatural vigor now faltered. Their earlier invincibility drained with the storm. Jenna's halberdiers advanced, redoubling thrusts. Torment crashed through a broken grating leading from the mines, wildlings roaring at his heels. The courtyard became a maelstrom of clashing steel, but the tide had turned. Within caverns, Euron stumbled, blood dripping. He clutched a charred kraken idol that pulsed faintly. Still living, his priests lined the passage, chanting, offering their throats. Fuel for one last rite. He slashed open 3 at once, bathing idol in gore. Weak lightning flickered along the stone. Euron snarled. Too little. Too late. The throne of rusted blades might yet sustain him. He staggered onward. But Samwell Tarly blocked the corridor ahead. Heartsbane across his broad chest, reached levies behind him. Sweat streaked Sam's temples. Fear flickered. But he stood. "No farther," he said, voice trembling but unbroken. Euron laughed. Half cough. "You?" He brandished his dagger. "Waddle aside before I feed your soul to deeper things." Sam's hands tightened on Heartsbane's grip. Memories flashed. Craster's keep. Whites in snow. The promise he had made to Jon. He stepped forward. Heartsbane met Euron's glass blade. The Valyrian steel sheared it halfway, sparks cascading. Euron hissed, drove lightning-laced punch into Sam's shoulder. Agony flared, but Sam twisted, swinging wide. The greatsword bit into Euron's wounded torso, through ribs, lodging deep. Lightning erupted, blasting Sam back against the wall. Euron sagged to knees, mouth frothing black. Sam forced himself upright, chest heaving. Raised Heartsbane again in a two-handed chop that severed Euron's remaining arm at the elbow. The idol clattered, sparks dying. Down the corridor, Daenerys and Jon arrived, bloodied and soot-streaked. They saw Sam staggering, Euron howling in feral denial. Jon strode forward, plunged Longclaw through the Kraken's throat. Daenerys added a narrow gout of flame from her palm. Dragonfire channeled through her lineage, searing the wound shut, sealing death. Euron collapsed. The throne's hum ceased. The storm above dissipated to drifting mist. Overhead, sunlight knifed through broken cloud, painting the rock gold. Courtyard fighters felt it first. The shift from chaos to hush. Reavers faltered, eyes clearing as if waking from nightmare. Yara cut the last berserker down, panting. Jenna raised her arm, lion banner trembling. Cheers echoed, disbelieving then exultant. Cersei descended from her tower, guarded by 2 Kingsguard remnants. She surveyed the carnage. Her dead men, her shattered walls, the corpses of Euron's monsters, the blackened mouths of her wildfire trebuchets, ruptured by dragonflame. Her gaze settled on Tyrion, blood spattered, leaning on a halberd haft. He met her eyes, sadness and fury mingling. "It's over, sister." Her lip curled. "Nothing is over while I draw breath." Almost casually, Yara planted her boot on the parapet and cocked a crossbow. "Fancy gambling that breath then?" she asked. Cersei's fingers twitched at her belt dagger. Drogon descended behind her with a sonic boom, wings sending up gusts that scattered ash. Daenerys dismounted, Jon and Sam flanking. Wildlings, Reach soldiers, and newly liberated Westerlanders flooded the courtyard. Cersei's shoulders squared. "So many beggars at my table," she murmured. "Yet none wear a crown." Daenerys' eyes were molten amethyst. "I wear fire? Cersei Lannister, and fire consumes." Tension coiled like a drawn bow. Then Tyrion stepped forward, palms raised. "Enough blood," he said. "Yield, Cersei. Face judgment, not annihilation." For a heartbeat, the courtyard held its breath. Seagulls wheeled overhead, the only sound. Cersei looked from brother to dragon queen, to the blood-slick stones where Euron's sorcerous ambitions had died. Her shoulders sagged. She drew her dagger, only to present it hilt first. "I will not kneel," she said, voice brittle. But you may take the rock." Tyrion accepted the dagger, eyes shimmering with unshed grief. "I'll take my sister's surrender." He turned, raising the dagger skyward. A roar rose. Of relief, of victory hard won. Jon clasped Sam's hand, helping him stay upright. Sam's arm hung limp, lightning burned, but his eyes shone. Yara inhaled sea air, imagining Pike's throne reclaimed. Lady Jenna knelt to thank gods both old and new. Daenerys stepped onto the Sunspire balcony, surveying the fractured yet unbowed fortress. She did not cheer. Her thoughts drifted to the ashes of Meereen, to the chains she'd broken, and the ones left to shatter. This victory felt smaller than destiny foretold, yet a necessary step. She lifted her gaze to the sea horizon, where calm sapphire now glittered untroubled by storms. Drogon rumbled behind her. She laid a hand on his warm scales. "Let the realm learn," she whispered, "that dragons do not fight for thrones alone. They fight for dawn after the darkest night." Far below, surf washed crimson from the stones, pulling it into the western tide, where the Kraken's shadow dispersed at last.